morning, good afternoon and good evening. This is We Are The One, Lincolnshire FA's official grassroots football podcast. My name is Zack.
I'm Ben Pearce, Designated Safeguarding Officer here at the Lincolnshire FA, and for this episode we'll be talking to Tom and Ethan, the Chair and Vice Chair of the Lincolnshire Youth Council. They'll be answering our questions on why having a youth council is important to county FAs and grassroots football, and why they're important to get youth voice into football clubs, and we'll also be touching on some of the work they've done around our recent The Big Football Ask survey.
Enjoy. So, I am here with Tom and Ethan from the Youth Council. Guys, if you just want to give us sort of an overview as to your own individual sort of involvements in grassroots football.
So I'm Ethan Freeston. I'm Links FA Youth Council Vice Chair, and I also sit on the FA National Youth Council as Research Insight Lead. I'm also an active Level 5 referee.
I'm Tom Wilkinson. I'm the Chairman of the Lincolnshire FA Youth Council. My involvement in grassroots football goes right back from when I was playing myself, but now also tends to be more around coaching for my younger family members and their teams. But I'm immensely proud to be on the Youth Council.
Fantastic. So we'll start with you then, Tom, being as though you've got the mic at the moment. So why did you get involved with the Youth Council and sort of volunteering more generally within grassroots football?
So I'll take the first bit, the Youth Council element first. So you might know James Cairns, who local kind of non-league level footballer, also was at Lincoln City for a while. Suggested it to me pre-COVID, might even have been during the first lockdown. And I saw it, I was like, that's a great opportunity, something that I could do to develop my skill set. And then once we all came together, I'm sure Ethan will also back me up on this, that you realise that there was a real group of people that were passionate about making sure that young people were heard and understood, because I believe that they're two different things in terms of what we think about football and what they get from the game itself, but then also how that actually is actioned or whether anything comes of their belief. In terms of why I got involved in volunteering, at the end of the day, youth football would be nothing without volunteers. And I think if you start that kind of voluntary kind of career, if you like, at a younger age, you're going to maintain that for a longer period, and you can then take teams up and through. Same question for Ethan, I'm guessing.
It is, yeah. So Ethan, why did you get involved with the Youth Council? And obviously you mentioned that you're a referee as well. So why did you get involved with that side of things?
Yeah, so in terms of refereeing, I was never very good as a player, and refereeing for me was a way of staying involved within the game. We love it as referees as much as players or coaches do. So that's why I became involved as a referee. In terms of volunteering, for me, it's a way of giving back, and also providing opportunities to young people that I myself didn't have as a young person, and how we can develop the game to become that, and really, provide those opportunities.
In terms of the Youth Council itself, Ethan, what is the purpose of it? I mean, you said you're also a member of the National Youth Council. I mean, is there a difference between the two? Does every county FA have a youth council? What's the purpose of the Youth Council itself?
Yeah, so most county FAs do. Off the top of my head, there's 6 who don't, that we work, that are within our sort of remit. The difference between Links FA, Youth Council and National, I mean, fundamentally, on the National Youth Council, we are working with county FAs nationally, and we're working more with county FAs rather than with Links FA. We're working with individuals and clubs instead of the county FAs themselves. On nationally, we provide different programs and opportunities. So one that's coming up at the minute is FALA, the FA Leadership Academy, 4-day residential followed by a 12-month learning and development opportunity. And I think that's a really key part of a youth council in terms of providing those development opportunities for the young people. 70% of football is played by under 25s, and that's just not represented in the decision making. So that's another key part of youth councils, trying to bring that voicing, and like Tom said earlier, being heard and being understood. So that's what youth council's there for, really.
Fantastic. So, in terms, and this is a question for you both, really. So you're sort of touching it there, but why do you think it's important for for young people to be given that platform to share their thoughts as to how that those key decisions that influences football and sort of grassroots football as well? Obviously, you mentioned that a large proportion of football is played by those who are under 25. So why is it important for that demographic to be able to have a say on how the game is run?
Yeah, so with those who are playing the game, I think it's really important that they make the decisions on the game. How can somebody double or 3 times their age make a decision on what that young person themselves want? I think the only realistic opportunity we have is actually those young people saying themselves what they want out of football. So that's the importance for me.
I think that one of our biggest challenges as a sport is making sure that everybody gains that kind of equal access. And that's not just disadvantaged groups, that's also the groups that we associate with full access. For example, myself and Ethan, who will have played for most of our junior years and then maybe stepped away to go and do refereeing or whatever. But those players, those younger people, ultimately are the game. And we have so many adults that are coaching, leading, setting up these teams that might be so far out of touch with what the players themselves actually want. And I think that's where our niche as a youth council comes in, because we are that youth voice. We have a number of members that are under the age of 18, obviously myself and Ethan plus 18. But that allows us to get that opinion from everybody, if you like. But like I say, I think our biggest challenge is ensuring that the players themselves actually get the opportunity to have a say in how their football develops.
Great, and that sort of leads me nicely on to our next question, really, around, you guys know that we've recently concluded our Big Football Ask survey, which the Youth Council are going to be a big part of driving the strategy behind the results of that. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions really around some of the early findings that we've seen from that survey and the feedback. So firstly, and this is a question for you, Tom, the survey indicates a big difference between how the young children or younger children, so 7 to 12 age group, feel about their football from the 13 to 18. So the results from the 7 to 12 age group were far more positive than 13 to 18. Now, the 13 to 18 were on the whole positive, but there was more negativity in their feedback. Why do you think there is that disparity between the two age groups?
Well, certainly from the Youth Council perspective, we have myself, who almost leads on the safeguarding element. But then I would say from my experience within education and also through the Youth Council, that we see a greater understanding of the principles of safeguarding itself. Generally, the older students, players become. But also I would say that the age categories that we've looked at and we helped as a Youth Council towards for the Big Ask themselves lean towards that competitive element, but also then that fundamental element for the younger age groups. And I think that's probably partly why we've seen the results that we've seen, because we've gone from questioning, asking players who have a total fun focus around their football, we hope, obviously in an ideal world. And then we move away from that as they develop into young people and younger adults, and that focus of playing becomes competitive. There's points on the line, there's cups, there's trophies to win. There isn't just that friendly go and join in a mini soccer tournament on a Saturday every summer weekend or whatever. And I think for me that is the answer, because football moves from fundamentals to competitive almost so quickly as those players develop and move through the age groups.
That's a really, really interesting answer. And feeding on from that, and Ethan, this is what I'd like to ask you really, is that there were a number of specific references. So when we gave the option for the older age group for like a free text response at the end of the questionnaire, there were a number of specific references to parents being the cause of the issue and the problem, and parent spectators, where they experience negative things in football, it comes from them. What do you think is the sustainable solution to that? Because the easy thing to say would be, well, ban them. But what do you think are more sustainable solutions to what we can do about that?
Yeah, so one thing that I've really enjoyed seeing over the last few months really is the silent support weekends. I think they're really important to bring that understanding and awareness. I can remember when they were first brought out, nobody really had the understanding of why it was there. Whereas now we've had a few of them, and that understanding has really increased. And I think that gives the parents the opportunity to sort of step back and go, how is my touchline performance and conduct, and how can I make sure that my child has a more engaged game of football and enjoys that more? And I think we've seen through stats that the young people, the players, do enjoy their football more on that silent sport weekend. So I think increasing the number of those could be a really good sustainable option.
Do you think it's a lot of it is a mentality thing, in the sense of that win at all costs mentality, and like you've both sort of really touched on in slightly different ways, is that once you get to a certain age, like I say, there's trophies on the line, there's points on the line, and it's that under 12 age where it starts to, like, you can start posting like your scores on social media and making them publicly, all that sort of thing. Do you think it's that there's that mentality switch, and that includes not just with players but with parents maybe as well, and with coaches even, that all of a sudden that mentality is like a light switch in a way, it just flicks over?
Yeah, definitely 100%. And I think there's a real culture shift, like you said, when those younger age groups, they enjoy the football, they're playing football for points, for trophies. So it's almost not as such playing football, but more trying to win the game of football. And I think it's just a culture within football, and I think that's something that they always work ongoing to try and change the culture within the game, to have more of a united game. When you look at the likes of cricket and rugby, where the fans are mingling together and they just really enjoy it. And I think that's something that, moving forward, that is something we'd like to see in football.
I will just add quickly that as much as we have a cultural kind of barrier to football in terms of that group culture, when you see, if everybody says, think of a group of fans, you know the image that comes to your head straight away. But we also mustn't forget that these are the parents who are responsible for getting those players to the pitch every Saturday afternoon, every Sunday morning. And if we suddenly decided that every time anybody did everything wrong at a football match and we got rid of them straight away, how fast are our numbers of actively participating players going to just plummet? Because how's your 7-year-old player in one of the links leagues going to get to his football, get to her football, if their parents are banned and they can't get there? And I think that's a massive balancing act that we've got to strike in order to, as you say, change this cultural element and understand that through things like implementing the respect barrier, implementing youth voice within clubs, if, as you've led on, your mission to get youth committees set up, not just within a county FA, but also within a club itself, hopefully those messages start to become a bit louder. And then that's one of the ways that we can really make sure that the players are heard.
Yeah. And there probably will be, some people who will listen to this and think, they'll be slightly skeptical as to whether that's achievable or not. Do you think it is achievable, that there's that balance between the win, wanting to win and wanting to be competitive, but also making sure that football is enjoyable first and foremost, but it's also a safe place. It's a place where, abuse isn't tolerated, all those negative sides of the game. There is that balance between still wanting to win a game of football as well. Because ultimately, if you ask kids, they probably will say that they want to win.
I think you'll find that most players will enjoy football the most when they are winning, because nobody likes to lose, especially not when you're a kid. But football has the opportunity to provide not only just physical activity and health related benefits, but you also have the ability to win and lose, which is massive thing. And that's a life skill, not just a football skill. And I think that it is achievable, because we as a youth council would hope that, yes, it's great that we've now got a youth council, but in however many years' time, when we look back, sure, we have to hope that that's the norm, not just the new. Yeah. And then you've then got a cultural shift, which will hopefully relate to everybody goes through football from under 7 or mini soccer all the way through until under 18 with a respect barrier that's in place, and nobody asks a question, because that's what we've all had. I know for a fact that myself, if that's what you start with and then all of a sudden you get to under 12 and it disappears, you think, well, what's going on here? That's not right. That's not what I'm used to. And then that becomes the environment that everybody's familiar with and everybody respects and everybody is used to. I think for me, that's one of the biggest ways we could solve the issue, that cultural shift, but that's going to take time.
Yeah. And do you think then that's why it's important for clubs to ensure that they've got that youth voice driving those sort of key decisions being made within their club or within a league or whatever that might look like, within those, those settings within football, that there's a youth voice being sort of led and driven by young people?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really important part within the game. We're seeing it more and more within the county FAs. Like I touched on, we've got 41 with that county FA Youth Voice Network, and I'd like to think we can get there with the majority of clubs as well. Touch on that last point, I think one really important sort of call to action would be the next time, a listener is at a game of football, ask yourself with that question between, winning at all costs and what you say. Think about what you say and think, is this, should this be normal? And is it a case of winning at all costs? Or, is it just within the sport? How positive is that, phrase you're saying, the words you are saying? How positive is it, and what impact will that have on your child, really?
And in terms of other challenges, I mean, we've spoken about some challenges facing young people there directly that we got from the questionnaire. If we look at young people in football and involved in football, when I was playing football as a young kid, I won't say how many years ago, but a long time ago, football was very different back then, and perhaps I didn't have the exposure to what kids would have exposure to in this modern age in 2024. What specific things do you think are real life challenges to particularly kids in the grassroots game? Are there other interests? Are we losing kids as a result of that? Or does something within football need to change? What do you think are some of the barriers to children and kids and young people accessing football at a grassroots level?
I would use this example. So I walked my dog, my usual dog walk the other night after work, and I got to the park. And for the first time for the entire year, obviously we're now midway through July, there was some young lads playing football on the field. And I thought to myself, well, that's the first time I've seen anything like that. And we've got a massive football pitch, a couple of pitches, a couple of goals. Obviously the nets are off. And I thought, what a shame that isn't the norm. And I'm sure probably for you guys, not to point out the age difference at all, but that's what you did. You would have gone home from school, rang your mates, right, let's go to the park, let's have a kickabout. And those fundamental skills that you will have been developing, not just for fundamental skills for football, but those social skills, those cardiovascular skills, really, that ability to keep playing for 3 hours before you went home for tea. Our generation have had none of that because everything's here. All the information that they want to access is there. There's not necessarily a need to go out and socialise, because you can do all that socialising on your phone. I think this is a COVID generational problem, because year 5s, year 6s, year 7s, year 8s that missed out on those key year groups or those key experiences at those year groups, now they know how easy it was to do nothing. Now, I'm not pointing the finger at any of those students, but I'm saying at the time, the society was forced to do nothing. I don't think this is just a problem for football. I think most sports will be experiencing this. In terms of what we can do, though, I think the fundamental element of football, that the younger year groups, we've really got to hammer home that the joy of playing, the joy of being involved in this, whether that's being a player or a coach or a manager or whatever it is, let's hammer home the fact that this is fun and this is an enjoyable sport to be a part of, and it's massively participated in this country. We're seeing now how proud everybody is of the England men's team. Well, imagine everybody had that pride for grassroots football and especially for youth voice. Imagine we had that kind of following and that backing. I think everybody would just enjoy everything so much more. I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that from a referee's perspective.
No, I think I agree massively there, that participation piece. And, if we did have that pride, and as well as just the game, as you said, in referees, I think look at the most recent Euros. We've had two really key refereeing teams there from England who have represented the country, which often go unnoticed. We had Michael Oliver's team there, we had Anthony Taylor's team there. And to have that representation on the national scale as well is great. So, hopefully that pride can follow through into youth football, into grassroots football and the non-league systems as well. We've got some great teams across the county in that non-league pyramid. Go and support them on a Saturday afternoon.
And what you've just touched on there has just sort of resonated with me a little bit in the sense of, do you think it's important from a young person's perspective, especially when we talk about having young people driving key decisions within clubs or within organisations, or even having, representation like you sort of touched on at the Euros from a refereeing perspective? Do you think from a young person's perspective, it's important to have that young representation at whatever level that might look at? So, and I suppose from a young referee perspective, you can look at Josh Smith within Lincolnshire, obviously now up to refereeing in the EFL. From a women's referee perspective, we've got Laura Van Leer and Amy Keir from a refereeing perspective. Do you think it's important to have that young representation as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. You hear so often, if you can see it, you can believe it and you can become it. And I think that's really important. And you look at Michael Oliver, he was in the Premier League at 25. And there's so many other people who've got the potential to do the same. We've got one on the Youth Council who really does have that potential to be in the Premier League at 24, 25 years old. So having that young participation within the elite level, I think is really important. But likewise, making decisions on a national scale. The chair of the National Youth Council sits on the FA Council, and just being able to see that and see that you're heard and listened to, I think is really important for young people.
I will say that I've had the delight now as the chairman of the Youth Council to step up and to actively participate in a number of the Lincolnshire FA board meetings. And I think for my team as a youth council, that shows them, oh yeah, when Tom does eventually step away from being the chairman, I might get to do that. And I think there's nothing more powerful than actually seeing somebody of your demographic, lives down your street, goes to your school, doing something that I'm being successful with it. I think for myself, one of my biggest inspirations is my dad. But I think he's one of my biggest inspirations. I see myself in him. And so I hope that what we've been able to do in terms of making sure that the Youth Council's heard from the board and the board feeds back to us, and also just say thank you to all of the board members, because they have really shown faith in us as young people, that I feel that we're not just a box tick. And I hope that this is a similar model that can be used in clubs, that youth voice isn't just there because, oh, look, we're doing this. We're doing this because we know it's the right thing to do. In terms of inspiring and developing the aspirations of those younger players, nothing more does that than seeing age groups above you win, succeed, perform properly, act morally in terms of respecting the referees. And I think that's, as a youth voice perspective, that's something that we have a lot of power over, because Ethan's worked hard to set up youth committees in teams themselves, in clubs themselves. And And none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for what we have done as a team to show those younger people that, look, in 10, 12 years' time, you could be sat on this youth council.
And obviously we've had Sean Clixby in on a previous episode from Broughton Ravers, and Broughton Ravers is a perfect example of a club that have now got a youth council within their own club setting. So what success has that seen, and how can other clubs potentially sort of learn from that as well?
Yeah, the work that Sean has done at Broughton is absolutely incredible. Leading on from the conference we had at Bishop Grot a few months ago, the work that he's now doing with Broughton Ravers and their youth council is really important and really inspiring. I think other clubs can look in on that, and I know that other Scunthorpe clubs have, looking at that and go, can we replicate something? Can we get that youth voice at our club? And slowly they're realising that actually, if you've got youth players as your main participation in your club, then why isn't the young people's voice heard? And why isn't that representation as big as the playing participation? It's such a flexible model, having a youth council in your club. It really is down to how the club works best. There's no one size fits all, and there's no hard and fast rule from us either. What we would say is get in touch with us. If it's something you're looking at setting up, we can jump on a call, just have a chat through things. It doesn't have to be official. It's nice and relaxed. But it is just that important underlying aspect of getting your players heard within your club.
I think one of our unique advantages from the way that my team, we've done this, is when we pitched this at Bishop Grot in November, we made this really flexible. And as you said, however clubs want to use this, they can. It's not like we've set up your youth committee must look like X, Y, and Z. We totally pitched it as openly as they wanted to interpret it, because we wanted them to realise that this isn't that hard to set up, and probably within a team they've already got a leadership group, and they're the perfect players that we're looking to. Okay, you're the leaders in your team, right? What do your team members think? There's your youth voice. Your team members, your leadership group are already having a say to the manager in the tactics of the game, and then all of a sudden that can lead to an informal conversation at training where they think, what would you like? What would you like in terms of what tournaments do you want us to enter this year? Do you want us to enter a 5-a-side, or do you want us to enter a 11v11? What do you think? There's your youth voice in already. I think that's our biggest thing, is that we want these youth committees to be coming through, but we want the clubs to make it their own. And as you said, as a youth council, we're available all the time to support with that process.
Fantastic. So to come on to sort of the work a little bit more that the youth council does then. So what do you hope to see for the next 12 months from a youth council perspective, and I suppose from your own individual perspective as well?
So one thing I'm really keen on bringing into the youth council since I've become the chairman is that kind of personal development for all the members. I think it's very easy to have a group of young people and for them to have objectives and things that they need to be working through. But what I would like to develop and bring in is that kind of, okay, you've just served 5 years on the youth council. What have you got from the youth council? What certificates have you got that you could go to an interview in 5 years' time and say, I did this and it gave me X, Y, and Z. Obviously, naturally, our council involves improving communicational skills, teamwork, leadership for myself and Ethan. But I massively want our focus for this year to be on developing the individuals that we deal with, whether that's as a youth council between us, but also from those individuals in the clubs that we are talking to, because, like I've already mentioned, we're working with youth committees that hopefully are going to be sat in our seat in 10 years' time. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that personal progression of, you might turn up to our first meeting a bit not so confident as you might prefer to be, or you might sit back and not say much. But hopefully, once you've been with us for a couple of months, you realise that this is about personal progression, but not just from us, but also from the people that we deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something we've seen already in terms of seeing those young people come in at their first meeting, sitting there, in a new group, really quiet, and then really seeing them come out of their shell it's really nice that we can provide that safe environment. We often speak about the young leaders of tomorrow, but I really think it's the young leaders of today as well. The leaders of today who can impact that today as well as tomorrow. We spoke about how, we lead on the team, but we've also got leaders within the team, leading on marketing and communications, EDI, male, female pathways, refereeing. There's so many leaders within that team. I really think leadership it's an action, not a position. And when people start to take that attitude towards it, I think that's when leadership changes. One thing I'm looking forward to seeing this year is the tournament we're looking to put on. Really focusing on fair play within Lincolnshire and how it is important to look after the game, look after the culture as much as it is to win.
Just quickly to add, neither of us started the youth council in our current positions, did we? And I think that sort of shows everything that you need to know. When we were formed, 2021 was it? Something like that. I was the vice chairman, but I was almost vice chairman by default because nobody else really wanted to do it. But now we're in a position where I would like to say I've moved up. I'm now the chairman. You've moved up massively, Ethan. And there's coming back to your previous question, there's your inspiration. There's your evidence that this does work and this does provide personal development for everybody who's on board. In terms of a club perspective, that might just be your captain or your leader of your youth committee that gets to under 18 and then decides to go off and play men's football. But you've been dealing with one of the younger ones that's all of a sudden, now I've got a bit of confidence, I can step into their shoes. So I think as a pair, we demonstrate that this is achievable and works.
Like a pair of proud big brothers.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. I mean, our last question was going to be around what, some of the key successes, but you've both described so many in sort of the last sort of half an hour or so. So I'm going to rephrase it a little bit in terms of, so the Youth Council has been going for 3 years. You guys are both long-standing members of that Youth Council. Talk us through the journey that's taken place over that 3 years, because you guys started as a really sort of new concept, new initiative. How has the Youth Council, evolved over that time, and how do you think you've got stronger as a group?
What a question, by the way. So obviously when we first started, I will never forget that first meeting when we came in here and we all sat down and it was just 9 people who'd never met each other before and weren't really sure of where they fitted in with each other, who was going to speak up. And I think for me, the biggest thing that's changed is the people that we've got. The faces that turned up on that first day in 2021 are not the same faces that are sat around the table now, other than possibly me and you. Is there anyone else who's been here from the very start? Millie, our administrator. It's just us 3 who've seen it all the way through. I think that's one of our strengths, is that we're constantly getting new ideas. In terms of what the journey's been like, we obviously faced a number of challenges at the start with COVID. We've had to hold a number of meetings online. We've had to understand that we've got young people and they have other commitments, work, education, whatever it is. We have to work around that. We've had challenges in terms of the fact that we wanted to actively engage under 18s. So we've had to do quite a bit of work in terms of safeguarding policy and how we can make sure that we understand that, which for all of us is fantastic. That's another opportunity for some personal development and some CPD. But I would say the biggest challenge we've faced is the fact that we don't get to see each other every day. It's not like we're a team that share an office. We are remote and we come from all areas of the county, all elements of society. So everything that we do we lean on each other for. And there's not like one way that we all come in and sit down at the end of the day and we can debrief on all the work that we've done. That happens once every month, once every 2 months even. And that tends to generate quite a bit of work, because 2 months is a very long time. Especially when you've got people as dedicated as we do, the likes of Millie, who works very hard on administration and making sure everybody's in the right place at the right time. You've worked immensely hard in the background on youth committees. Kelsey's worked, and I'm not going to go through and name everybody, but I'm just trying to give you a few examples. But Kelsey's worked so hard on putting our tournament together. But all of that happens in the background. It's not like we sit down and we do it together, everything basis, and then we all come back together and then it's, oh, right, okay, this is the next thing, and everybody goes off and then comes back in 2 months' time. So I think that's our biggest challenge, and I think that's the journey. The journey is come together, go away, come back, and that's the process that I think everybody enjoys so much.
No, definitely. And that team we've built, it's an inspiring team. It's a very inspiring team with some really great people in there. And one thing that I've enjoyed seeing in the development of our youth council is being heard and being understood from the staff, board representation that we're now seeing, and being recognised on the national scale as well, as key award nominations. So yes, we have faced challenges, but we've really broken through those barriers, and continue to break through those barriers all the time. And there's nothing stopping the youth committees across the county doing the exact same.
Fantastic. Well, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure to sit and chat with you, apart from the fact that you said there was an age group when I'm only 25. But apart from that, no, it's been absolutely brilliant to sit down and talk with you. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, I didn't have full understanding about how much the youth council actually does, but once you sort of sit down and really go through it, it's like, Jesus, it's ridiculous. So thank you very much for coming in and joining us. I know obviously Ben has felt the same way about obviously being able to sit down and actually talk through things with you as well, guys. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.